Good morning, Garland Nixon here. It's early Monday morning, and we're hanging out with Laith Marouf. Apparently, the Iranians have been doing some more mowing the lawn, shall we say, in Israel, and there's a lot going on. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're hanging out with Laith Marouf. He's live in Beirut, and we got plenty to talk about. Apparently, the Israelis are usually the ones saying they're doing the lawn mowing, but, I guess the view's not so good when you're under the lawnmower instead of the one pushing it. At any rate, before we get going, let's start with the most important thing. If you want to keep up with everything that's going on in the Middle East, you have to go to freepalestine.video. That's right. That's Laith's site. Look at that, man. I mean, look at it. The first time I clicked on that website, I was like, man, that's the most amazing website I've ever seen. I've seen all of this video and I haven't even done anything yet. If you notice, they got their latest episodes there. They've got field reports, military operations, of course, all their social media links. You can click on there and make sure you follow them on all their social media links. But most importantly, you'll see the second little box over says donate to Free Palestine TV. That is your opportunity to help. You may not look, let's face it, if you try to donate to one of these groups that are help the Palestinians, half the time they're actually run by Zionists and the money's going to the Zionists. You don't know where your money's going. But if you donate to freepalestine.video, that's freepalestine.video, you know that you are helping the cause. You know that you're helping people who are out there amongst the very difficult battlefield conditions, doing the important work, all in English. So please, freepalestine.video, donate to freepalestine.video. And of course, instead of one time, you can click one time, but it's more important, even if you don't have a lot, it is important if you can, if I can figure out how to get us back here, if you click on the monthly. So some people may be like, well, I think $5, that's all I can do. Well, maybe you can do $5, $10, $20 a month instead of one time, and you can be part of helping the cause. Certainly appreciate it, everybody. Let's get rolling. All right. Let's start here. Washington Post is reporting, the Wall Street Journal, which is the mouthpiece of all mouthpieces for neocons, right? Let me see if I can find it. Well, at any rate, it's a lot of places. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the Israelis are saying, now that they have thoroughly defeated Iran, they may need to wrap up their military operations once they've hit all of their targets and go on about their business. I thought one of two things. Either because you can't trust a word out of these people's mouths, that means that they're going to keep going for weeks, and the U.S. is about to come join the war, and it's going to be all out mayhem. So when they say we want peace, the first thing I think is that means war. The second side of it is this: they're getting pasted. And if they go another 10 or 12 days, there will be rubble where Iran used to be. The Zionists, they're catching planes, surfboards, anything they can to get the hell out of that pile of godforsaken rubble. So either one of those things could be true. But at any rate, your thoughts about the what's happening, the missile strikes in occupied Palestine, and the latest reports, Laith Marouf.
Yeah, it's clearly that the Zionists have a bit more than they can chew. And with Trump's attack on Iran being unsuccessful in destroying its stockpiles of uranium and or damaging those deep underground facilities, this means that the United States can't actually achieve what the Zionist colony wants without having a nuclear attack being conducted. So the U.S. Has crossed the red line of attacking nuclear sites openly. I mean, they attempted attacking the Ukrainian nuclear site, if you remember, and blame it on Russia, but they didn't do it fully, and they didn't do it in the open. Right now, the U.S. crossed that red line of attacking nuclear sites. which is a war crime, an international subscribed war crime. And the only way that they can achieve what Israel wants is to cross this line even further and use nuclear weapons in their attacks on Iranian sites. And that's going to bring us clearly into a nuclear holocaust. So what is happening right now is Iran's missile bombardment of the Zionist colony continues at a even more advanced pace. We saw a huge change in the plans that the Iranians are using in terms of their firing of missiles. Over the last week, they have been testing over and over different trajectories, different loop, angles for their missiles, and combinations of solid fuel and liquid fuel missiles, along with drones. And finally, now they have, it seems like, perfected how they can hit the Zionist colony without even triggering the alarms. So we saw over the last 2 nights last night and today, attacks hitting the Zionist colony, and then the alarms ringing across the sirens ringing across the colony. So that shows you that over the last week, the Iranians have discovered the perfect spots, the perfect trajectories, the perfect combinations in order to make it impossible for the air defenses of the Zionist colony, which are already beginning to be very depleted. Even then, they were unable now to, monitor the missiles as they're arriving.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting about this, and that is, you can go back to hundreds and hundreds of years ago when the colonialist would go to some country or some place where there were people there who were indigenous people. They had guns. The indigenous people didn't have guns. And so they would just kill them all and take all of their stuff because they had guns. They're accustomed to going in and saying, oh, these people don't have the technology that we have, so we can easily take all of their gold and whatever else they have. I think one of the things that's crushing them is, this is supposed to be Iran. They're supposed to be, they're inferior, for God's sake. They're Persians. They're not Europeans. Iran's technology is more advanced than the West. Clearly, their missile technology. Well, one of the reasons that the alarms have not been going off, apparently the Israelis have these phone alarm systems that go off. Well, the Iranians apparently hacked into their phone alarm systems, and they would make the alarms go off when no missiles were coming in. Then they wouldn't have the alarms go off when the missiles are coming in. So one of the things they've seen is that the Iranians' advancement in technology is far surpassing the Western advancement in technology. And I think that's one of the reasons that the U.S. is a little hesitant, because I think they're afraid, they're finding out, look, if the Iranians really want to hurt us bad, there's nothing we can do because their technology is more advanced than ours.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Iranians today managed to have the whole Zionist colony sirens blaring for 45 minutes nonstop across the whole land. And they achieved that with this new combination of missiles. They only fired 20 somewhat missiles and drones, but they did it in such a way that is layered and prolonged delivery. You'd think that 20 missiles and drones by themselves, and each one of them being fired alone over a period of 45 minutes, that will mean a higher interception rate by the Zionists. It actually didn't. In fact, we know now today's interception rate is below 40% of what was fired. This is according to the Zionists. I believe it's even lower than that, because we have confirmed video of at least 10 hits in the Zionist colony, and that's half of the missiles and drones that were fired, according to the Israelis. And clearly, they're not showing us the things that have been hit in remote locations. We know now that also the Iranians today hit the electricity factory or plant in Ashdod, close to the borders of the Gaza extermination camp. and now huge swaths of the south of occupied Palestine and without electricity. This is the second major power plant that is damaged by the Iranians over the last 7 days. And if they are totally destroyed, these two plants, these are the two major plants that give electricity to the whole colony. There will be no electricity running. And in retaliation, we saw the Zionists target just a few hours ago the major prison in Tehran. And clearly, this is a tactic that the Americans and the Israelis used before, targeting the prisons in Syria or the prisons in Iraq to get the wanted terrorists out in the streets so they can kill people and cause havoc. And this is what they tried to do again here in Iran, but the Iranian police managed to control the situation. There's no escapees. And, half an hour later, the Israelis targeted the major police station in Tehran and the Ministry of Internal Security and one of the largest universities in Tehran. So we see again a repetition of attacks on universities, on the police, and there was attacks on multiple ambulances that were arriving to the scenes. So again, this is the same. It's written in the DNA of Zionists to target medical and educational staff and police. They want chaos. They want death of anyone that can help the country.
Well, what's interesting is this, and that is, while that gets them, the feeling that they're terrorizing the people and everything like that, Iran seems to be much more calculated in that they're hitting strategic targets that are destabilizing occupied Palestine, that is causing people to leave. The other part of it here is this: you don't have to destroy Israel. You just have to make it unpleasant for people to live. The people there are very soft and cushy. They're used to an easy life with a cell phone and an outside cafe and watching Netflix and TikTok and Twitter, etc. And now that they have to actually suffer something they've never had in their life, actual incoming war, warheads and rubble and destruction, I think they're done. I think they're going to leave and they're not going to come. These people are going to be back in New Jersey or the suburbs of Paris. They're not coming back. I think this is it. And they literally, I've been showing articles, they're literally saying to the people, for people who haven't seen it, this is, for people who haven't seen this, this is the level of desperation. Some people might not have seen this. I'll share this. Now, this is Haaretz. Israel tells airlines not to let Israeli citizens leave. So now they're literally in such desperation that they have to say, that's an Israeli newspaper. Hey, you guys can't leave. They've turned it into a Jewish concentration camp, for God's sake. How ironic is that?
Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of Zionists that already have left the colony over the last week on boats, on yachts to Cyprus. There's also thousands of them that crossed into Egypt and into Jordan at the southern tip of occupied Palestine, going into Aqaba or Taba, that are two resorts on the Jordanian and Egyptian side, across from Eilat. So today we know that there's 25,000 Israelis that applied to leave on these flights that were now authorized. Only those that have a special authorization from the government will be leaving on these flights. But the missiles that Iran fired, forced many of those flights that were coming today, as the Ben Gurion airport was hit, to cancel and actually land in Cyprus. There was a flight coming from New York to Tel Aviv, a straight flight. Now it's landed in Cyprus. So, look, there's, 20. Look, the we look at how they are fighting in the bunkers inside the big cities like Tel Aviv and Haifa. We saw the videos of international workers being rejected space in those bunkers, whether it's like Thai or Filipino or Indian workers. And we saw yesterday fights starting between the Zionist colonists themselves, not allowing their neighbors to go into the bunker, and fist fights and what have you. And the images of the all these colonists rushing inside the Ben Gurion airport today as the missiles were falling, and they're running scared like chicken. You know, these Zionists are used to, as colonists, to have Western troops die for them. They are used to an American, a British, a French, a German elite and government sending their own troops to die for them. They're only used to stealing land from unarmed civilians. They only came to the Zionist colony because of that promise that you can steal a land and a home and kill indigenous people at will. And now they're finding out that it's better to be a thieving landlord in New York that's overcharging the residents than to try to steal homes from Palestinians in Jerusalem. So this is the reality, and I feel sorry for people in New York, but they're going to have a lot of these people coming back to them soon.
Yeah, what they're finding out is this: there's a lot of people that you come and you may take their stuff, and they say you can take it. Yep, you can take my property, you can take my land, you can take whatever, but you're gonna have to fight to keep it. And they want to take it, but the fight to keep it part is the part that they're not ready for. Let me ask you this, and this is something that we have to discuss, and I don't want people to forget. The Zionists have shut down the internet in Gaza because they don't want to see, they're still starving people. They're still putting food out. When somebody goes to get the food, they machine gun them. They're still doing the worst things imaginable that any human beings have ever done on earth. The most unthinkable, evil, devious, diabolical deeds in human history are being done by the Zionists as we speak. And even though we do have to talk about Iran, I think it's important not to forget the heinous acts that are being taken against the Palestinian people.
Yeah, the attacks on Iran, the attacks on Lebanon, the attacks on Syria, on Iraq, on Yemen, were all to allow the Zionist colony to continue to genocide the Palestinian people with no one stopping them. So, you know, the American airmen that fired those missiles on Iran, they fired them so the Zionist colonists can continue killing children. That's what the American soldiers risked their life for 2 nights ago. And, you know, according to the latest study from Harvard University in the United States, the actual number of Palestinians missing in Gaza is over 470,000. So we are up to, and maybe much over, 500,000 Palestinians that have been martyred, killed, murdered at the hands of the Zionists and their Western backers over the last 21 months. So when we're talking 500,000 out of 2 million people there, it's basically, we're talking 25% of the population killed, probably another 25%, if not more, are injured. So and those people that are injured are dying rapidly because of lack of medical care. And therefore, this is a Holocaust. This is a mass genocide that we haven't experienced in the 21st century, right? We haven't, no other population has lost this large percentage of its people in a massacre, in a war in the 21st century. So this is the worst genocide, and it continues every day at the aid distribution, aid mowing points. There's at least 100 Palestinians every day being shot by Israeli soldiers as they arrive at these aid distribution points. And the bombardment continues of tent cities. Every night, more and more tents are targeted by incendiary weapons on purpose to just watch people be burnt alive. This is the pastime of the Zionist colonists, it seems like. And, you know, I don't think people understand what it, you know, those who didn't take action up until now, they can blame themselves for us being on the edge of a nuclear holocaust. Since no one in the West took a stance to force their government to actually stop supporting this genocide, not only Israel got emboldened, but the whole West, the whole Western elite decided, well, our own citizens and their opinions don't matter. Even if they all come out to the street, they're all wimps. They will watch as we rape their own mothers. This is the truth about the Western citizens, right? Up until now, none of them have shown that they are a threat to the elite that wants to genocide. And since that passed and nobody did anything, now we see the Western elite and the Zionists emboldened to the point of attacking nuclear sites. And now, if nobody punishes them for this, if they are not taken out of power by their own population for bringing us close to this nuclear winter, we will see Israel and the West using nuclear weapons. And this is why I think right now we see a rush by Russia and North Korea and China to do something in order to stop the possibility of the West using a nuclear weapon to defeat Iran.
Well, one thing is obvious, to be honest. Israel's already defeated, in my opinion. Israel is thoroughly, completely defeated. And because they're defeated, they are desperate. Well, I'll put A, Israel's desperate to get the U.S. in, and B, the U.S. is desperate to get in. In my opinion, you know, there were two schools of thought. One school of thought was, well, Trump doesn't know how to get out of this, so he's going to try to just bomb a couple of spots and get out of it. And I thought to myself, I think the opposite. I think the idea is we're going to bomb these sites. We'll bait Iran into hitting, because they know right now they got 16% of the American people are in favor of this. You know what I mean? I mean, literally, they got nothing. The American people do not want, are not in favor of it, right? So they're very wary. Well, we just can't jump in. And, you know, what is the repercussions going to be? The cost of oil? We could have an internal uprising. They're scared of that. So the bait was, we'll bomb some spots. And then Iran will hit some of our bases, kill some American troops, or hit a ship, maybe kill some American troops. And then we can say to the American people, oh my God, they're killing American troops. We got to get in. So the plan was to sacrifice American troops at the altar of Zionism, to get deliberately, to get Iran to kill some American troops. That's what they want. They're sitting there saying, Iran, please do anything to kill American troops. So once they're dead, then we can make our excuse and we can get this thing higher than 16% to get in. And Iran's too smart for it. Iran won't take the bait. And that's the problem they have. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Israelis wouldn't be the first time decided that they're just going to kill some American troops and blame it on Iran, that the USS Nimitz or some base becomes the SS Liberty.
Yeah, I mean, Iran has been very smart, and they answered yesterday in an open statement saying that Iran's response to the attack on nuclear sites will be the destruction of Israel, and that they are this war will continue for a month to 6 months of constant bombardment of the Zionist colony. And then after they destroy Israel, because this is the biggest American base in the region, as they described it, after they destroy Israel, then they can think about what they want to do with the American presence, because the American presence will be weakened so much at that point in the area. So I think you're right. The Israelis, it's only Israel's, that wants Iran to directly attack the American soldiers in the region. So what we saw today, the concentration on the border areas in the north with Lebanon, with Syria, and the border with Jordan in the south, those were hit a lot of the big bases there, and the underground munition storages in those areas for their major bases of the Israelis in the north and the south. So this is preparing the ground for a possible ground operation by resistance groups like Hezbollah, by resistance inside Syria, by the regular population inside Jordan. Imagine if the Iranians destroy all the Israeli bases on the border of Jordan. If our viewers remember, a few years ago, during the last attack of the Zionists on Gaza in 2020, there was thousands of Jordanians that crossed the Jordan River and the border into the West Bank, and that created chaos inside the West Bank. So you could imagine if there's no bases at all on the border with Jordan, all destroyed, and millions of Jordanians cross in just without even weapons, what will happen? So what we see is that Iran is building the situation to create a battle zone on the ground inside the Zionist colony, and because otherwise we see the Israelis trying to prepare, and the Americans prepare the ground for a possible land invasion of Iran. So Iran is now in a race with the West about who's going to open the battle, the ground war, and on which battlefield. And I think the Zionist colony is much more ready to be the battlefield on the ground now already.
I also think this. I think that these Gulf states and the monarchies in the region are scared to death, because it is my opinion that the direction they're going, if they increase the intensity and this war spreads, the boundaries, the lines that were drawn by the British after World War II will surely be redrawn. That the monarchies and governments that have been put in power and supported people, literally British people from, that have homes in the suburbs of London and, supposedly running countries in the Middle East. If this thing spreads, I think many of them fall, if not all of them. There will surely you have countries where 98% of the people support the Palestinians and the government doesn't. You have like Jordan, where their military is trying to is working with the West to try to intercept incoming missiles from Iran. They're literally fighting on behalf of U.S. imperialism. I don't see, if this thing gets dirty on the ground and spreads, I don't see how those governments will be able to stand.
You're right. They will not be able to withstand such a thing. They've only existed for the last 80 years, these governments, because of the stationed troops there, including, for instance, in the royal family, in the Saud family, there's a British special force that's always around the king in the palace. They are the guards. They control what the king does, of course, look, the battle for decolonization after World War II was about the colonized people trying to erase the colonial borders that were drawn by force on them. And there was a few experiments to erase those colonial borders. One of them was the unification of Egypt and Syria, and that lasted 9 months. The only other unification that worked also temporarily was the Yemeni unification, and now it's split again. So the decolonization movement failed. And we saw, because of that failure, the U.S. beginning after the collapse of the Soviet Union, go the other way of trying to erase colonial borders by breaking them even to smaller bodies. So we saw the breakup of Yugoslavia, the breakup of Somalia, the breakup of Iraq, the breakup now of Syria. They're keeping the borders other than Yugoslavia, but truly on the ground, there is no one Iraq, there is no one Somalia, there is no one Syria on the ground. So if the decolonization movements around the world want to succeed and make their success permanent as can be, they have to try to achieve that goal of unification and erasure of colonial borders. And we have the first experiment happening right now in the 21st century, which is the unification of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And as we see, President Traoré yesterday said that Burkina Faso will be looking to build and acquire a nuclear weapon, so it doesn't have to deal with what Iran is dealing with what other nations that fought the colonial powers have had to deal with.
Yeah, the lesson that is taught is a lesson of North Korea. Right now, North Korea, they said, oh, we'd be happy to give Iran a couple of weapons. Well, you know what the U.S. going to do? Attack them? I don't think so. The U.S. is not going to attack North Korea. North Korea now says, well, you can attack me, but it's going to cost you all your West Coast cities. And so that's the only thing these knuckle dragging apes understand, with my apology to knuckle dragging apes. So I understand also that there was a suicide bomber in an Orthodox church in Syria. How do you think that fits in as far as the, the imperialists, the U.S. empire's attempt to destabilize the region?
It's very sad, this attack on the church, St. Elias Church in Damascus. I've been to that neighborhood and I entered that church before. It's a beautiful church. And the Wahhabi death squads wanted to target openly and genocide openly the Christian population, as they did to the Alawites and the Shia, but there was too much of an eye on them. And they needed to play the Christian sentiment in the West, not to make anybody angry while they're killing Shia and Alawites. Now that the whole world's eyes are on Iran, this is what these Wahhabi death squads decided to do. And as we see, there's not much of a condemnation coming anywhere from any capital in the West about the killing of 20 somewhat women and children and men in the church on a Sunday during Mass. And as a Syrian, this is to me is heartbreaking, especially that Syria was the historical first refuge for Christians after the empire of the time, the Romans, and the collaborationists with the empire, the Zionists of their time, the Jewish elite of their time, the Zionists, were killed Jesus Christ and were hunting the Christians. This is where the first Christians hid, in Damascus and its surroundings. And today, Syria, thanks to the new empire governed from DC and the new Zionist elite, the Christians of Syria, Syria has become a tomb for them, a killing field. And so it is very, very, very sad. And I expect this to repeat over and over, and that I don't expect anybody to come to the aid of the Christians of Syria, not from the West for sure.
What do you think about I've been hearing, in fact, I even heard about a militia in Pakistan that said, if the war spread, if the U.S. enters, they'll join. I'm hearing militias, I'm hearing the Taliban, I'm hearing so many different groups say, Yemen, so many different groups say that if the U.S. enters, they will join. that I think if the U.S. enters, what they have no idea what they'll be starting. It'll be a civilizational war. It will spread like wildfire. I think Ali Sistani has warned them not to join. I think it's possible that he or others could issue fatwas to Muslims to say, hey, the U.S., it's all out. I think they have no idea what they're dealing with, and that the direction and they're going, if they start this thing, I think the empire gets smashed to pieces in the Muslim world. That it is another empire that comes to the Muslim world to dominate and will get smashed to pieces. That they'll get smashed, thoroughly ejected, that they have no, this is my opinion. And I'm not just saying that because of my love for the people in the Muslim world. I just don't think they have any idea what they're up against, and they'll get smashed. The empire will get smashed there.
Yeah, I mean, there was huge demonstrations yesterday in Pakistan and huge demonstrations in Iraq. And of course, yes, the Taliban said they're ready to help defend Iran in a full-out war. We already, of course, saw how the Yemeni resistance said they are going to be targeting American positions now in the sea and any shipping coming for the Zionist colony and the West through the Red Sea. You know, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Iran is now in Moscow. He just met with President Putin, and President Putin said that Russia is prepared to aid the Iranian people. So this is an indication of that Russia is not going to sit aside and let Iran be defeated. You know, you did hint to North Korea saying that they could send a nuclear weapon or two to Iran to defend itself. And I think, you know, Pakistan is even closer. By the way, the border between Pakistan and Iran has been closed since the beginning of this war last week to civilian crossing, but there is non-stop deliveries of weapons and missiles and anything that you can think about through these borders. There's now lineups of trucks full of weapons, and this includes weapons that are being delivered by China, by North Korea, by others. So we'll see this war on Iran. Anyone and everyone on this planet that wants to score a point against the United States, it will be joining it. Okay, so the U.S. may think that by attacking Yemen and Lebanon and taking over Syria, that they have somehow contained Iran and can now beat it up on there by itself. But in reality, they have awakened other parts of the world that where they're not going to wait for their own turn to be beaten up by themselves. And so I think whatever shortages of any weapons that Iran may have, and they are not anywhere close to being short on anything, they will be filled by all those allies: Pakistan, North Korea, Russia, and China.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I think the U.S., the empire is desperate. But one of the interesting things I see is the similar tactics. Here's what I mean. The U.S. kept and the NATO kept trying to do everything they could to get Russia to attack a NATO country. You know, when Russia said, don't fire missiles, they said, oh, great. If we fire the ATACMS into Russia, then they'll strike a NATO country. They're looking for a way to drag their civilians into this mess and get their civilians wiped out against Russia. Every time they do it, all Russia would do would be pummel Ukraine harder. Now, it seems to me that Iran is using the same tactic, that whatever happens, it seems like people are learning the tactics of the empire. They're looking at the empire. The empire, let me say this. This is important. Forget that. I got something I want you to comment on. Just hit me. The U.S. empire uses its IAEA. It uses its UN. It uses these international organizations to do its evil deeds, right? right now, all 3 sites that were bombed were inspected by the IAEA. The IAEA comes out and gives them just the letter they needed hours before this happens. The IAEA worked with them to do illegal actions to cover up the false flag that was supposedly Syrian using weapons of mass destruction. One of the things that's happening is these Western imperialist organizations are being outed. The whole world's now looking at the IAEA and all this other stuff saying they're thoroughly discredited, and that needs to happen.
Yeah, there was a meeting earlier today. It just got finished at the IAEA in Geneva, and Iran put a motion in front of the governing council to condemn the American and Israeli attacks on its nuclear sites, and they refused to vote on it. They refused to condemn attacks on civilian reactors that are inspected by the IAEA. And the gross, disgusting Secretary General of the IAEA had demanded at the end of the meeting that Iran opens a path for their inspectors to check on the damage. He wants to verify to the US what did they damage or not. This is how much of a lunatic sock puppet Grossi is. He's openly saying, I'm not going to condemn the attack on your civilian infrastructure that is inspected by us, that has been verified that it's not military use. And I want you to show me the damage that America did so they can figure out if they need to bomb you more. This is how ridiculous this agency has become. And of course, it is expected that in the next few weeks, that Iran will withdraw from the IAEA and we will draw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty as this war continues and as the destruction of the Zionist colony becomes inevitable. Then it is going to be inevitable that Israel will use a nuclear weapon on Iran to stop this war. And therefore, Iran has no choice but to declare itself a nuclear power with a nuclear weapon in the window of the next 2 weeks in order to force all the parties to only use conventional weapons. And in a conventional weapon war, Israel will cease to exist. And so the West will have to, in the next few weeks, as Iran declares itself a nuclear power, will have to figure out how can they withdraw all their colonists from Palestine, and how can they take also their nuclear weapons with them and shove them where the sun don't shine.
Well, you know, the thing about it is, one of the things that's interesting about the U.S. empire, and that is this, even listen to their language of war. We're going to strike Iran. We're going to strike this. We're going to strike that. That goes to show that they have no understanding of war. That's not a fight. I'm going to strike somebody. Well, he's going to strike back. It could be a long war. We could end up wrestling around on the ground and fighting for hours and hours and hours. They seem to think in their mind that they can just go punch somebody and then the war is going to be over. Right now, they do not. Israel, we're going to strike Iran. We're going to launch this big attack and then they'll fall. And if they don't, you're going to have a long war in your hands and you're going to lose. And the U.S. will strike Iran. Everyone knows the U.S. is running short of things. All the U.S. could do would be attack of one. It's one big punch, but they don't have the capacity because the U.S. doesn't have a historical concept, a long-term vision. So they don't understand that when they punch Vietnam's going to fight them until they win. When they punch, you know what I mean? That's why they keep losing wars. Oh, we're going to punch Russia. Russia's going to fight them until they win. They're not just going to punch back. They're going to fight until they win. And in saying, as Trump does, well, regime change might be the right thing to do. What they're signaling to Iran is, well, we're not going to give you an out. This is going to be, we're going to try to take you out. So they put themselves in a position where their adversary is in a long-term war. They're in a short-term war. And before they know it, they're figuring out how to get the hell out of this mess.
Yeah, and you know, Iran hasn't done anything to damage the flow of oil and gas yet. The Iranian parliament voted to give to authorize the closure of the Hormuz Strait. And up until now, the National Security Council of Iran hasn't taken that decision. And if Iran just closes the Hormuz Strait without even attacking the gas and oil fields of the Western monarchs that are controlled in the Arabian Peninsula, there will be huge shortages of gas and oil in the Europe specifically. And China will not be harmed, by the way, because 90%, or Iran itself, because 90% of all of Iran's oil exports are actually going through train to China. So it doesn't need to use the Strait of Hormuz, and also it has a lot of ports on the Gulf of Oman south of the Strait of Hormuz. So its oil and gas can continue the flow even through the water if it wants to. So this is the logical next step if the United States and Israel continue on this path of targeting civilian infrastructure in Iran, is that the next step will be the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And I think even though that the United States owns its own gas and oil supply enough to run its own country, because the capitalist elite in the United States are so monstrous, they wouldn't put a cap on the increase of prices of oil and gas in the streets of the US, and the American public will be screwed, okay? And I hope that maybe motivates the American public to do something about the dictatorship that they have.
I think, if you look at historically, the ruling elite, I've been saying this for years. People who watch my video, watch me on the radio know their only fear has always been the same thing: internal uprising. That's their big fear, internal uprising. What are we going to do? What if the people, because they know that's that's always the danger to the ruling elite. And when you start dragging your country into a war and you got 16% of the people that are in favor of that, people were in the street within one day. And might I add, the whole MAGA movement, they're online saying, we voted for you, Trump, because you promised us no more war. Well, there is one good thing about it. You know what that is? They're learning the truth. What the revolutionary reminded people already told them: you're a fool if you think you can vote your way out of this. They're going to give you Trump. They're going to flash Obama. He's nice and brown. He's got a beautiful family. While he's a gentle guy. They're going to bring in Trump. Oh, he's something totally different. He's outside. He's a real estate guy. They're just always going to bring, oh, look, we've got a black female, a diverse group of, next there'll be a trans person. They're going to play all these damn games. But no matter what, they don't run it. They're not in charge. And if anything, maybe these MAGA people who are blowing up saying, we've been lied to. Good. I'm glad to hear that, because they're waking up, learning a truth that we already knew, Laith.
Yeah, well, what was those two characters in the Alice in Wonderland, those number 1 and number 2? What are they called? The two brothers that are, they look like eggs. Anyways, that's basically the American choice of voting between the Democrats and the Republicans, and they both work for the Queen of Hearts, the Zionist, So, and the Queen of Hearts, the Zionists are bloodthirsty. So this is the reality. Live in Alice in Wonderland. I watched this video today of a American citizen. He's of South American origin. His son served in the Afghan war, and his other son is now in the military, getting kidnapped and beaten to pulp by masked, unidentified ICE agents, and then thrown into a car with no plate numbers. So this is where the U.S. is moving on a larger scale. I personally don't understand why up until now none of the gangs in California or New York started doing this. I mean, who can identify you if you put on a mask and buy off eBay an ice jacket and start nabbing some rich people from Hollywood or whatever it is and throwing them in the back of a car? What the American government is doing right now is that dangerous. I'm saying it in a jokey way.
Yeah.
But it is true. Honestly, anyone can do that right now, and there's no way to trace who they are and how they did it and why they're doing it. So any American citizen is now a possible victim of kidnapping. Okay, and that's all thanks to how the American government's been acting. And I think they're doing this to prepare the public. They know how much harm this does to have these ICE agents with no identification, with masks, with cars with no plates, how dangerous this situation. They know, the elite. The Zionist government in the United States knows this, and they want every citizen to understand that you could be also kidnapped at any moment, whether you're an American citizen or not, and end up in El Salvador, and God help you, and who's going to take you out of there? So we are, if people think this genocide in Gaza or this nuclear brinkmanship that we're seeing in Iran is going to stay just here, they are fooling themselves. It's already playing out on the streets of the United States and the West in general.
Well, I always say, watch what the U.S. does in Ukraine, and you'll know what they want to do at home. Look, people are like, well, look at what's happening in Ukraine. They're driving around, grabbing people, throwing them in the trucks, beating them up, and taking them to the front, right? Oh, there you go. We got another person who's going to war, another soldier. Well, you know what? That's what ICE is doing. And let me ask you this. And everybody knows this, man, if they start a war here in the United States, the people, young people ain't going to that. Well, what do you know? They already got the model for that, don't you? The same thing they're doing in Ukraine. Oh, like young guy walking down the street, comes out of a bar. Guess what? He gets thrown into the back of a truck. Off he goes. You're going to war to fight for Israel. People think that that's crazy. That, oh my gosh, no. They will. When people don't want to go to war to fight for Israel, if you see what they're doing, that's what they always bring it home. And so in the same way, look at Ukraine. They shut off all of the TV stations. They got one TV station. They shut down all of the newspapers. They got one newspaper. Well, you know what? That's already here. Look at the TV stations and the news stations. All of these anti-Trump CNN and MSNBC stations. Guess what? Now all of a sudden they're pro-Trump. They're all singing the same Zionist song. So what people are seeing in Ukraine saying, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Zelensky's a fascist. Zelensky ain't in charge. He is doing the bidding of the U.S. empire. And if they'll do it here, their plans, whether I can't say they will or won't get away with it, but their damn sure plans are the same things for your kids.
Oh, yes. And you saw how Zelensky is, supporting the U.S. attack on Iran. And, obviously he's a Zionist, Jewish supremacist himself. So his priority is not even Ukraine. His priority is Israel. And he's willing to even give any weapons. I'm telling you, if the Israelis or the Americans give him a choice between giving weapons to Ukraine or Israel, he'll say, take all the weapons and give them to Israel.
He's already doing it. They've already doing it. They took a bunch of air defense systems from Ukraine. They took a bunch of missiles they're already doing it. They're stripping Ukraine. They're now saying, we got Zionists and we got Ukrainians. Well, you know what? They're cannon fodder anyway, and that ain't looking good. Let's just throw the Ukrainians into the fire and we'll go over here. It's simple. We're going to take Ukraine. We'll use it to take Russia out, and then we'll go after China. Oh, crap, that's not working. Screw Ukraine then. Let's take Iran out, and then we'll go after Russia from the back. It's the same game. And Zelensky is an actor, and he's not an actor in the Ukrainian game. He's an actor for the U.S. empire, nothing else.
Yes, and you just gotta keep on supplying him with that nose powder.
You're right.
And, he'll keep on, it's like the Energizer Bunny. But definitely, look, the war in Ukraine was instigated by the United States 6 months after Russia entered the battlefield in Syria. The whole intent of the whole war in Ukraine was to drag Russia away from Syria, into that battlefield in order to achieve what they just achieved in end of last year, which is the fall of Damascus into the hands of the Wahhabi death squads. So right now, the Americans, the only reason they're maintaining this war going on, although it's a lost war already, is to make sure that Russia cannot spend any of its military power or project its military power on any other battlefield. And so this is why, even with why is the Israelis attacking specifically the northwest of Iran and its coast with the Caspian Sea? They want to create a geographic barrier between Iran and Russia. And so if Russia is unable to provide aid to Iran, if Iran falls, there is no more Russia. I tell you this openly. You know, the Russians already lost a lot with the loss of Syria. They haven't admitted it, you know, yet. But this battlefield in Western Asia is what determines the future of empires.
Let me add this. And Netanyahu already said something. I think that's why the Pakistanis are scared. Netanyahu said Pakistan's next on the list. Well, of course it is, because that's the border into China. What they want is they want the back door of Eurasia to go boom, the Baltics and the Baltic Sea, whatever, the back door of Eurasia into Russia and into China. And the people are, you know, I've heard people like, oh no, Pakistan is, you know, they're all for the empire. Well, I don't trust them, but I'll tell you this. I think they know the truth that after, if they would be successful taking Iran, they would set Iran up to use it as a platform to take out Pakistan. And once they take out Pakistan, boom, there's China right there. And Pakistan is an important part of the Belt and Road, building all of this stuff. So Pakistan is next on the menu, and I think Pakistan knows it.
Yes, and the Zionists are emboldened. They even added, they said next is Pakistan, after that is Algeria.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last Arabic republic standing that is not in the pocket of the West, the last Arabic country that escaped colonialism in the 1960s and hasn't been captured again, is going to be the last target in the region after Pakistan. And no matter what we think about Pakistani government, remember the Pakistani missile and nuclear programs were both built in collaboration with the North Koreans, the Syrians, and the Iranians. Okay, and you know, if Pakistan didn't have that cooperation of Iran, Syria, and North Korea, it wouldn't have been able to develop its missile system and its nuclear system that protecting it against invasion by India. It would have been, you know, taken over a long time ago at Pakistan. And right now, the United States has invested itself in the Hindu fascist in India and the Zionist fascist in the Zionist colony, and they both hate Pakistan. So even if the Pakistan wants to be buddy-buddy with the United States has more, like a couple of billion brown people in India. Why do they need Pakistan? Pakistan can't offer anything more to the United States than what India is. Therefore, its fate is now, whether they like it or not, the elite of Pakistan, their fate is linked to the fate of China and Iran. And we will be starting to see probably in the next few days terrorist attacks across Pakistan that the United States will instigate with their Wahhabi death squads to try to destabilize the country.
Additionally, now we see a truth that Kashmir region, a terrorist attack, which everyone was questioning, what's going on there? What's happening in there? It's clear that that was a precursor to this. They were planning on going after Iran, and they wanted to destabilize Pakistan first. They wanted to set India and Pakistan at war to destroy Pakistan so they could just walk in there after the war. And it's clear now what that was. That was, and Netanyahu said it. Hey, Pakistan is next. They didn't just think of that yesterday. That has been on the plan for a while, and I think Pakistan's waking up to a reality that if you try to align yourself and work with these monsters, sooner or later your day will come. Sooner or later your time. I think, and one of the things the Pakistani said was, Muslim countries have to realize that if they do this, they'll come for all of us. And that's, I think, a wake-up call. I don't know about the Gulf monarchs. I think they can hold on, but they're going to find out one way or the other. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, this, although I don't like saying this, and probably you too, but this is a religious war.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Zionists have declared it as such, and they have no tolerance for any advancement in any Muslim society, knowledge and technology. So they will be, they want to subjugate every Muslim nation on the planet. And currently, practically every Muslim state is under their control, save for the Sahel countries that just escaped, and Algeria, Iran, and that's it. Pakistan, we could say, is balancing itself, but it's not under their full control. So it's logical that the Zionists will go after Pakistan and Algeria and the Sahel countries, and it's logical that all these countries, protect themselves with as much weapons as possible. And if they can get their hand on nuclear weapons, like Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger have all those uranium, mines, it's perfect time to now build a nuclear weapon and protect yourself from anything Western invasions.
I believe that if this broader war starts, I'm not sure, we're at a crossroads, or either one of two things. Either the empire is going to try to increase it, or they're a little worried and they'll back off for a while. I'm not sure. We will see. But I've said, I said this for a while. As the world starts to realize that this is a war for domination by the U.S. empire, that's purely what it is, everywhere, all over, the Zionist empire. If, in fact, the U.S. gets caught up in this gigantic war in the Middle East, the African bases will be attacked. There's no question in my mind now that you have to if you're in Africa. And of course, if you're Russia and China and Iran, and that you have to look at a weak spot and say they don't have but so much so much power, and it's a time to eject the U.S. from Africa. And I think that if this spreads, the bases in Africa are going to be blown to smithereens. That's a weak spot that would be taken advantage of by the people who are pushing back against the U.S. empire.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what Yemen's going to do beyond attacking the American assets in the sea or in the Gulf. But I think right across from Yemen, there's Djibouti, which is hosting French, Italian, British, American bases that is very easy to destroy. They don't even need to fire those hypersonic missiles. It's just across the water. So definitely, there's also Israeli bases in Eritrea. There is occupation bases for the Emiratis in Sudan. There's a lot of things that could be done that will open battlefields that are uncalculated and will have result in things that distract the empire and spread it thin. And look historically, every time there was resistance and wars in the Arabic world and Western Asia as a whole, other parts of the world managed to escape while the empire is busy killing Arabs and Muslims in the region. So although it's a sad thing, but I think everybody should take advantage. We're glad that our stubbornness and our willingness to sacrifice all this blood to stay free gives a chance to other people on this planet to also be free.
One last thing before we go, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the U.S. Oops, drop something. But I'll be honest, man, I've never seen the level of anti-Israel, anti-Zionism that I'm seeing now in the United States. If you go on social media, all you see is fury. And basically, this is what it is. The American people, foolishly, I might add, they were misled into thinking they lived in some kind of democracy. They were misled into thinking that they had some input in their government and their government had to listen to them. There's a shock, I think, in the American, a lot of American people are waking up to realize, holy crap, we got no say. But the other part of it is there's somebody that to be angry at, and they're angry at this. All you see is anti-Israel, anti-Zionist fury everywhere. And even though, right now, these powerful Zionist forces are holding on in the United States, man, there's a storm brewing here. A real storm brewing. That's a little scary if you want the truth, because it could go really, really bad, if you know what I'm saying. And as people of peace, we want peace everywhere. But the Zionists, in dominating our politics to a point where they're endangering the people here, are creating a fury against them. A fury. You look online, there's a fury against Israel everywhere, all over across the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, I watched 2 nights ago the Chancellor of Germany tell all the media standing in front of him that we are willing to die for Israel. So, I mean, this has never been said by any self-respecting nation, that they're willing to die for somebody else, not to defend themselves. So I think every citizen in the West, no matter how much programming they had lived in their life over whatever lifespan they had, they've been bombarded for 21 months with scenes of children being massacred and chopped up and burned alive and beheaded, hundreds of those images a day. So all the programming that the Zionists had invested in through the education systems of the West and the propaganda and the Hollywood movies and so on has now been demolished. And so you look at the election that's happening in New York City right now with Mamdani there. I mean, the Zionists are having a freak out. They're openly saying, we are willing to elect a rapist, alcoholic drug addict that got rooted out of his position as governor, Cuomo, to become the mayor, just so we don't elect somebody that has some Muslim in him and or is against the genocide in Gaza. And this is, I think, the population of New York itself is like, what the hell is happening here? It's because, remember, it was the Zionists themselves that destroyed Cuomo's career and exposed them in their own media. And suddenly they're willing to run cover for him, all for the Zionist colony and for the City Hall of New York to continue throwing hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenues from New York City citizens to arm the Zionist colony, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So this is becoming a local issue for every person in the world. It's not anymore an issue of just the children being massacred in Gaza. Can we stop that? Our governments from supporting that. It's now our City Hall, our mayor is being run by the Zionists. Our democracy on the little scale of municipal election, which doesn't really matter usually, except in huge cities like New York, are being manipulated by the Zionists. And that is what's making this a personal issue for every American or Western citizen. And that's where I think the Zionists are going to be unable to draw back all this movement on this issue.
Well, I got bad news for the people of New York. I don't care if Cuomo is down by 50 points on election day, he will win. I don't care. You're going to go vote, and if 99% of the people vote for the Mamdani or whatever his name is, when they count the votes, I think when they count the votes, Laith, I think we know how that's going. It doesn't matter. The people, they can go out in the streets, they can do whatever they want to. When the votes are going to be counted in Tel Aviv. Okay, they're not going to be
and I
counted in
tell
New
you
York.
something. There's another thing that most people don't understand about municipal elections in the United States and Canada and the UK, is that other than different than provincial or state elections or national elections, federal elections, in municipal elections, you get a vote for every property you own. Okay? So as a, let's say, citizen living in New York, I have a home in Brooklyn and a company that I own the building in Manhattan. I get a vote for each one of those.
How about this? And I live in Tel Aviv.
Yes. So you could imagine all those elite in New York having multitude of votes in comparison to the working class that don't own any property. And this is the leftover from the property laws. Remember, Americans themselves didn't have all of them the vote before. It was only property owners. This was the kind of the compromise that was done to when talking about giving everybody the vote, every man before women and or people of color, because man was only white before. So even that compromise to give every white man the right to vote included the caveat that property owners, landlords, will have a vote for every property they own also in municipal elections.
There you go. So ultimately, look, can you imagine? Now, one thing may hurt the vote, and that is if the electricity's down in Tel Aviv and Haifa, because let's face it, a significant portion of the vote, and I don't say that to be facetious, there are a lot of people who are American citizens who live in New York City, quote, on paper, but they actually live in Israel. They spend their life in Israel. And right now, they're voting from Israel. There's a massive vote. There truthfully is. I mean, people can say what they want. There's a massive vote in Israel that goes to the New York elections. However, if their electricity's out, it's going to be hard. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the electricity's out, if the computers are down. It doesn't matter what happens. They ain't even going to count the votes. When election night comes in New York City at 8 o'clock or whenever the polls, they will make the announcement. Looks like the Zionists won again. What a shock. Won against all the polls. Every single person can walk out of the poll and they can do an exit poll. And every single person can say, I voted for Mamdani. Well, what do you know? Cuomo went. It's a joke. You're going to be had, people in New York. You're going to get the same thing the people who voted for the peace candidate got.
Yes, and of course, I think all this illusion of democracy is finally lifting off people's minds and eyes, and I hope all of these calamities around the world will wake people up to take action to democratize their governments for real.
I think you're right. Before we go, and this is critical for all 1,263 people that are watching, guess what? This is Laith's hard work. It is freepalestine.video. That's Free Palestine TV. But remember, it's freepalestine.video. That's how you get there. Him and his team go out all over the place, Beirut, you name it, Lebanon, southern Lebanon, on the border, dangerous areas. I've seen some of his videos. You can hear machine guns and explosions and drones in the background. They've had to run from, Israeli drones looking at them. You're going to see all kinds of stuff. You got the latest episodes, field reports, military operations, and of course, the very important thing for all of us, and that is you can donate to Free Palestine TV either one time. If it's possible, you can donate monthly. That's right. You can become a monthly donor. So please help with freepalestine.tv. and do everything you can to make sure that go to freepalestine.video. That's where you can act. That's where you can do something to make a difference. Please. Don't forget, everybody, follow me on Telegram, follow me on Rockfin, follow me on Rumble. We got all of the options there for you to donate. And of course, my P.O. box is there if you want to send me whatever you want to send me, a letter, a book, a donation, a magazine, you name it. It doesn't matter. I get mail all the time. Thanks a lot, Laith Marouf. Any last words?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Garland, and I'll see you next week.
Everybody, the most important thing you can do, the number one thing, share this on all your social media platforms. 1,224 people. I expect to see 1,224 shares on X and Facebook and Instagram, all that stuff.